Hello and welcome to our second lecture in this series on drugs and human behavior. We're going to continue discussing pharmacokinetics, and in this particular lecture we're going to talk about drug distribution. Once again, please remember these videos are for educational purposes only. Please consult a physician or pharmacist for any questions about your medications or any drugs you might take. So we've been talking in the last lecture about drugs being administered. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how drugs get throughout the body. So once a drug is absorbed into the bloodstream, it's distributed via circulating blood. The drug will then have its effect once it reaches its site of action, or what we will talk about as receptors in the brain. And so that's going to be an important talk we'll have later in terms of how those receptors work. Most of the administered drug, of course, will end up elsewhere because it's going to be distributed throughout the blood pretty evenly, and so the drug's going to be everywhere you don't want it to be in addition to where you want it to be. And so we'll talk about how these effects often are what cause side effects. So for example, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors oftentimes have effects on the GI system because there are lots of serotonin receptors in the gastrointestinal system. And so oftentimes when we talk about the side effects of a drug, it's because they're having effects elsewhere. And so that's going to be an important thing to keep in mind as we start talking about different drugs and their side effects. So in order for a drug to be absorbed, it has to pass through capillary walls. And so you can see these kind of places in the capillary walls where drugs might be able to make their way through. Lipid-soluble drugs can go right through the membrane. And so that's something to keep in mind. They're very different from other types of drugs. The capillary walls consist of a single layer of cells. There are holes or pores in between those cells, and these are the places in which some drugs might be able to pass. So nutrients, waste, and drugs move through these different pores or openings. There are a number of things that cannot make it through those capillary walls. So red blood cells, large protein molecules are simply too large to make it through those capillary walls. So that's an important consideration with drugs is how big of a molecule are we talking about? If it's a large protein molecule, it's probably not going to have an effect because it's not going to make it out of the blood. So injected drugs move through the capillaries and through the blood by diffusion. So it's a simple diffusion process you've learned about in chemistry, and diffusion is going to be an important part of our discussion of how neurons work here in a couple lectures. So important to keep in mind how drugs actually get out of the blood and into the tissues which they're targeting, and it's something that we always have to be mindful of. So drug molecules, of course, are often found in different places in the blood itself. So plasma is most likely to be carrying water-soluble drugs. The platelets will be carrying more lipid-soluble drugs, fat-soluble drugs. And so it really depends on the type of drug we're talking about. They can oftentimes also be attached to proteins, so something like albumin. And we call these bound versus free versions of these particular molecules. So for example, testosterone, even just naturally or occurring testosterone, or what we call endogenous testosterone, if it's in its free form, it actually can't cross the blood-brain barrier. It has to be bound to a protein. So bound testosterone is an important component of understanding how it might affect behavior. Next really important part of understanding how drugs get distributed is what we call first-pass metabolism. So before the blood goes to the rest of the body from the GI tract, it passes through the liver. So anytime you have oral administration of a drug, the drug will go through the liver first. So whatever drug you are taking, it's only what gets out of the liver that's going to have an effect on you or your behavior. So the liver is, of course, the major organ that breaks down drugs. Something to keep in mind that if your liver has been taxed greatly by things like alcohol use, or if you take, for example, a lot of Tylenol is very hard on your liver is going to have a harder time breaking down drugs, and so your drug metabolism may slow down. So a certain amount of the drug will be either inactivated or metabolized into an active metabolite as it goes through the liver. So this is an important consideration about how much of the drug is actually going to make it into your system. So other routes might not be subjected to this first pass effect, in particular things like inhaled drugs are not going to go through the liver first because they're going to go straight into the arteries and to the brain. Other drugs, as they're going through your blood, may go through the liver or may not, depending on where they're injected. So it's an important part of understanding how these processes work. So basic idea here is we have an intravenous injection, blood being distributed to the liver and from the liver. Really just kind of depends on where in this process that might have been injected. So if you have an intramuscular injection, as you see down here on the far right, that might go through the liver first, whereas an intravenous injection, it might go to the heart first and then up to the brain. And so you really have to keep all of this in mind when we talk about routes of administration. So, as I mentioned in the previous lecture, alcohol dehydrogenase is an important part of how alcohol is metabolized. It breaks down alcohol in the GI tract and in the liver. And women have substantially lower levels of this enzyme, and so they have less first-pass metabolism and end up with much more alcohol being absorbed. There are a number of other issues with alcohol and gender differences, primarily having to do with muscle and fat ratios and how much blood volume. Men just tend to have a larger volume of blood. Another thing to keep in mind about how what you're eating or drinking might have an influence on drugs is some foods can block certain liver enzymes. So grapefruit juice, or grapefruit itself, blocks the cytochrome P3A4 enzyme and can increase absorption of some drugs by decreasing their metabolism. And so, for example, Xanax is a drug that is metabolized by cytochrome P3A4. And so oftentimes people are encouraged to avoid grapefruit juice along with some drugs. That's a really important consideration. So if you have a medication that says do not drink grapefruit juice, it's because that drug isn't going to be metabolized and you can have some toxic side effects. So buspirone, or the drug brand name Buspar, is one of these drugs that is metabolized by cytochrome P3A4. And you can see individuals who had drinking or eaten grapefruit get about 3 times as much drug absorbed as those who had not eaten or taken grapefruit, which is this orange line down here. And so it's important to understand how this might have an effect. Now, this could potentially be a positive effect because then you could take a lower dose, but oftentimes the safest route is to just say no grapefruit and then just increase the amount that's given because people are going to be really inconsistent in terms of, they're not going to have a glass of grapefruit juice with every pill. So keep that in mind. So there are a variety of body membranes that affect drug distribution. Cell membranes themselves are an important barrier. Capillary walls are another barrier we've talked a little bit about. And then the blood-brain barrier is one we'll be primarily concerned with in this particular course. But we'll also talk a moment about the placental barrier, which turns out not to be much of a barrier at all. So cell membranes are made of a phospholipid bilayer, particularly neurons are made of a phospholipid bilayer. That membrane is only permeable to small lipid-soluble molecules. So if we're trying to get something inside a cell, that's an important consideration. Most of the drugs we're talking about don't actually enter a cell. They interact with the surface of a cell and can cause changes on the interior of the cell. So these are important as barriers to absorption and distribution of drugs because they're not generally having an effect directly on the interior part of a cell. They're interacting with the exterior, in particular receptors on the surface of a cell, which can then cause changes to the cell membrane itself, or can cause changes to the genetic signaling inside a cell. And so that's oftentimes, or in general, how we are concerned with how drugs work. Capillaries are tiny cylindrical blood vessels. They tend to have small pores between 90 and 150 angstroms, which is larger than most drugs. And so most drugs can freely allow out of the capillaries. So this allows transport of drugs regardless of their lipid solubility. And there are other things, of course, that cannot pass through them, blood and proteins. drugs that bind to plasma proteins cannot pass through those capillaries, and so depending on what you're trying to have an effect on, it's an important consideration because it won't get out of the capillaries, and so it won't be affecting the areas that you would like it to. The blood-brain barrier is, of course, particularly important for our purposes. The brain protects neurons from toxins. Neurons are delicate things, and so we want to make sure that toxins aren't getting in, and so we try to block them to the greatest extent with the blood-brain barrier. But of course, the brain has a great need for nutrients and oxygen, has a high amount of blood flow. In fact, most of our blood flow is dedicated to things like keeping your brain going, and your brain uses a lot of oxygen and uses a lot of glucose, and so it's important that it get those supplies. But of course, along with that can come other particular toxins. So the blood-brain barrier is the body's solution to this. So capillaries in the brain are much tighter and don't allow drugs to pass as easily as the rest of the body. So this is a problem with psychoactive drugs, is oftentimes they are not where we want them to be. So this is a really important consideration for any psychoactive drug. So for example, the drugs we use to treat Parkinson's disease are different variants of the substance we want, because it can pass the blood-brain barrier. So levodopa is what we use to treat Parkinson's disease, because dopamine itself, administered, doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. So it's an important consideration for any of these. Finally, the placental barrier. Drugs primarily cross this by passive diffusion. This is not a good barrier to drugs. So any drug a mother takes is going to be partially exposed, is going to expose the infant. So any drugs that are taken in, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol for sure. We'll talk about fetal alcohol syndrome when we get to alcohol. Painkillers, all of these potentially have effects on the fetus. And so it's very important for pregnant mothers to carefully take a look at the drugs that they're taking. And this is going to become an important consideration when we start talking about things like treating bipolar disorder or seizure disorders, because some of those drugs are teratogens. And so it's an important consideration to think about what to do to keep the mother healthy, but also keep the fetus healthy. So that's an important thing we'll talk about more as we move along. All right, so that's the end of this quick lecture on drug distribution. We're going to be talking about metabolic half-lives next, which is a really important part of that. And again, these are great resources if you are looking for more information.